Hi, today I am giving my review of the book Momentous Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusti. This is the sequel to the novel Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. Now, I read this book about 4 years ago at this point. This is the sequel, which I have only recently gotten around to reading, though I had been very excited to get to it. Originally, I thought that I wouldn't make a review video of this book because I read the first one so long ago and don't have a review video of that one on my channel, so I thought that I wouldn't do one of this one, but I decided to do it anyway because I really enjoyed it and I have a lot to say about it, and because why not? I want to not listen to the dumb rules that my brain tries to make for me. If I want to do a review of this book, even though I don't have a review of the first one on my channel, I can do it. And I can talk about the first book in this video. So normally I would have preferred to have reviews of all the books in the series on my channel, but that is not the case with this one, but that's okay. I am still specifying that this book is a sequel. So this series is about a girl named Aven who was born without arms. Despite that, however, she lives a pretty good, fulfilling life, and she doesn't really let it stop her from doing anything. Some things she has to do a little differently. For example, she does a lot of things with her feet, but she does a lot of things. She has a lot of hobbies. She has great parents. She's adopted. Now that's important. We'll get back to that later. She has friends, and in the first book, her parents move to Arizona to an amusement park called Stagecoach Pass. Her parents are kind, but they don't really enable her, and I think that's important. So this first book is about her moving and getting adjusted to life at a new school. She makes some friends. There are some mysteries involved in it where she learns more about her past and her biological family. There are a lot of things she does. She forms relationships with people who work at Stagecoach Pass. And I read this a few years ago at this point, but I remember really enjoying it. So Momentous Events in the Life of a Cactus takes place when she is starting high school. I believe in the first book she is in 8th grade, so now she's in high school. This is a middle grade series. Though she's in high school, it's still considered middle grade. And I would say the genre is contemporary. Now that she's in high school, she's going to a new, different school. It's much bigger than the school she was going to before. There are thousands of new kids for her to get used to. Although she's pretty confident in herself and her abilities, she does get annoyed sometimes, mainly, for example, when people stare at her. And lunchtime is one of the times when that happens the most, especially because people see her eating with her feet. So that's one of the things she's struggling with, along with just starting high school in general. Like, she says it doesn't bother her when people stare at her, but it also kind of does. And I can get that. I don't have the same exact struggle, of course, but I think I can understand when you want to say that something doesn't bother you, but it kind of does, and you're like, well, maybe it shouldn't, but it still does. Another thing she's dealing with is, in the first book, she meets a friend named Connor, and he has Tourette syndrome, so while they don't have the same disability, they do have a disability in common, both something that's pretty noticeable on the outside that people can make fun of or comment on. So she becomes good friends with him, but he goes to a different school for high school, so they are no longer going to the same school, but they are still friends. She does already have a friend she met in the last book named Zion, so he's still going to the same school as her. But other than that, she doesn't really have any new friends at the school, and she feels pretty intimidated by all the new people there, especially considering, based on the way she looks, a lot of people can stare at her and maybe make unfair assumptions about her. She also quickly learns that Connor has made a new female friend at the new school he's going to, so Aven's a bit jealous about that and a bit worried that she's being replaced. She has a lot of things going on in this book. One of the biggest things going on is a lot of drama and dealing with meanness from other kids. She's been judged before, of course, she's been stared at and people have said things to her, but in this book, people are cruel to her in a way that they've never really been before, and she's never really dealt with being bullied that badly before. So she deals with a lot of bullying in this book, and we really get to see the effects of it and how it really shatters her confidence. She's normally very confident and doesn't let anything stop her, but of course she is human and has her problems as well, and so we really get to see her the most vulnerable we've seen her before. I've seen in some of the other Aven books. I'll get more into that later, how there are different books in the series and which ones there are. We do see in some of the others her being a bit insecure that she can't do things as easily or the same way as other people, but for the most part she's pretty positive. But in this book we really see her at her lowest. So yeah, there's definitely some drama going on at school, especially with boys. She also becomes closer with Zion's older brother Lando, and they form a friendship. So some other things going on in her life. She still has more to learn about her biological family. She learned some things in the first book, but she hasn't learned everything yet, so that's all I'll say about that. So she is curious about that. There was an old man at Stagecoach Pass named Henry, and he, like Aven, was also an orphan, so She wants to learn more about his family and where he came from. She feels really bad that he doesn't know anything about where he came from, if he had any siblings, especially because he's old and she doesn't want him to die without ever knowing where he came from. Aven enjoys horse riding and she wants to do a new move called the jump. She's been wanting to do that. Of course, she has some challenges. I'm sure horse riding in general is tough, but especially when you don't have arms, so she has to do it a little differently. So she's a bit worried that she won't be able to do that. She wants to horse ride in an upcoming show at the amusement park, but she's not sure if she can do that, so that's another thing she's worried about. At the amusement park, there are different animals, and I enjoy the animals in this. There's a llama named Spaghetti, and he's been lethargic lately, but maybe it's just the heat. It is very hot where they live, especially at the beginning of this book. So yeah, Aven's got a lot of goals, worries, and problems. There are a lot of things going on in this book rather than just one singular plot. It's mainly just about her first few months of high school and trying to navigate through that. There are a lot of things I enjoyed about this book, and I've written a lot of them down, so I'll name some of them. For one, Aven has a blog, so some of the chapters contain her blog posts. Her friend Zion and his family are really into comic books, and they're going to go to Comic-Con, and Aven wants to join them. So that was interesting. I learned a bit more about comics from this book. It was cool to see them with their interests and learn more about those things through them and their passion for it. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of fun things in this book, like the Comic-Con stuff. It has been a few years since I read the first book, so I don't remember everything. So it's possible that this character wasn't introduced until this book, though I'm not completely sure. But there is a girl named Trilby. I believe she's Aven's age, though she is homeschooled, so she doesn't go to the same school as Aven. But her parents work at a smoothie shop at the amusement park, and she and Aven become friends. Trilby is very much into punk rock music, and she very much has a punk rock attitude, so Aven learns more about that style of music that she wasn't really familiar with before, and what it really means to be punk. So that's something that's explored in this book. As someone who very enjoys that kind of music myself, I really enjoyed all the punk rock stuff in this. I don't think there was really anything like that in the first book, so that was a pleasant surprise. That was just a little thing that I wouldn't have expected to be in there, but I've heard that the author really likes that style of music, so it's cool that she incorporated that. At the beginning of every chapter, there are lyrics from a punk rock band, and the lyrics have something to do with whatever is going on in that chapter. A lot of times it'll be the way Aven's feeling about something. So it was really cool seeing Aven discover that kind of music and that kind of culture and seeing how much she enjoyed it, and I could really relate to that. I do like pop punk more, but I still like punk rock as well. As I said, I really enjoyed this book. I was definitely invested in the things going on in it. Do you need to read the first book before reading this one? I would definitely recommend it. I mean, it's not the kind of thing where it's just episodic. The first book definitely, I think, should be read first. And I will say, because it was a few years since I read it, some characters, when they were introduced, and some series do this differently, they'll kind of reintroduce who that person is, but some of them were just mentioned, and I didn't fully remember who they were right away, but it didn't matter too much. Mainly like the adults at Stagecoach Pass, some of them I didn't really remember, and some of them, it didn't quite say what their role was, I felt like, but that was fine. That makes sense, because you would know if you read the first book, and I have, just a few years ago. For the most part, though, I think when it comes to everything and everybody and their roles as characters, it's pretty easy to follow along with who those are, even if you didn't know who they were at first. But it definitely would make sense to read the first book just because that's how series are supposed to work, so that you know about Aven and her friendships with these other characters and everything else that went on before, especially when it comes to the things she learns about her family. So yeah, this is the kind of thing where you should read the first book first. I'm just saying all that because I don't have a review of the first book on my channel. Maybe if I reread it someday, I would do it, but I don't want to do a review when it's been years since I've read it. I like to do my reviews when the book is still somewhat fresh in my mind, whether it's a few days or preferably no more than like a few weeks after I've read the book. So some things I remember enjoying about the first book: it had some interesting mysteries. I thought it was fun. It had some good representation. It was probably funny. I don't really remember anything specific that was funny from it, but this book I thought was pretty funny at times. So the first book probably was as well. I remember really enjoying the first book. And this book has some mysteries as well, not just with Aven and her family, but also Henry and his family. It's not a very long series, which I think can be nice. There's not too much to it, so it's not very overwhelming. There are just these two books. I don't know if there will be any more. I don't know if there would be any more. I wouldn't be surprised if the author added more to it, but as far as I know, these are the only two main books in the series. We'll get to the others later, probably near the end of this video. As I mentioned, we really see a lot of Aven's insecurities and her lack of self-confidence in this one. That is definitely a big part of this, and we see how it affects her life, her relationships, the way she approaches her hobbies. I think that this book is very much about the importance of friendship, about family, about the importance of having people in your life who care about you and can support you. I think it's about the importance of human connection. I think that the author does a good job at understanding and portraying the feelings of Aven. I think she seems to well understand the actions and emotions of young people. I think she does a good job at describing why Aven feels the way she does, though Aven herself doesn't even seem to fully understand why she feels the way she does. As I said, there is some good representation in the first book. What representation is there in this book? So there is Amelia, which I believe is the proper term for somebody who was born without arms. If somebody has lost an arm, that would be considered something different. But if you're born that way, I believe the correct term is Amelia. There is a little bit of representation of Tourette syndrome. I felt it was better explained and described in the first book because that's when we were being introduced to Aven's friend Connor. But there is still some of that in here. There is a little about sundown syndrome, and Aven's friend Zion and his family are black. So there's some representation with both disabilities and also race. And they do talk a little bit about black representation in comics, because remember his family is really into comics. So it does touch on that a little bit. There was a little bit of OCD representation in the first book with a side character. There isn't any of that in here. I love when there are so many little things in a book that are perfect for me, that I enjoy. I think I read this book at the right time after reading the first book rather than reading this right after reading the first. I enjoyed the old characters in this book. I thought that they were realistic with the way that they spoke and acted. Another thing I thought was realistic was the mind of a teenage girl going through hardships. This is definitely the hardest part of Aven's life so far. I think that Aven is a really good character. I think that she's so entertaining, no matter what she's doing, where she's at, or who she's interacting with. I follow the channel Colby Sharp, and I remember him saying something about her. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something like she's one of the best characters in middle grade fiction as of recently. And I must say I agree. Not just because she's interesting because of her disability, but also just her personality. That's really what makes her interesting. I thought this book was really fun and important. I think it had a lot of fun things in it, but I also think it had a lot of great messages. I loved it. I think Aven really goes through some hard things that she had to go through in order to learn what she learned. And I think that she learned some important things about herself. I said that I really enjoy Aven, but I like the other characters as well. I really like seeing them interact with each other. So I wanted to talk about the other books in this series. So first of all, there is the novel The Beat I Drum. This just came out this year. Now this is from Connor's perspective, and I think this is about him starting high school. So basically it takes place at the same time as momentous events in the life of a cactus. I haven't read this yet, but I'm really excited to get to it hopefully soon. I think it'll be really interesting to get his perspective, so I'm really looking forward to that. So far in this series, I've only read from Aven's perspective. I think it will be interesting and important for me to learn more about Tourette syndrome. And maybe this will contain some of the events that happened in momentous events in the life of a cactus. So yeah, there's The Beat I Drum. I think that'll be really interesting. I don't know if it matters if you read that or momentous events in the life of a cactus first. I read momentous events first because that's just the book that came out first. I think that makes the most sense. Maybe after I read The Beat I Drum, I can let you know that. And then there are also the Aven Green, I guess we could say, chapter books. I just kind of refer to it as the Aven Green series. I read all of those earlier this year. There's Aven Green Sleuthing Machine, Aven Green Baking Machine, Aven Green Music Machine, and Aven Green Soccer Machine. So these books are for younger readers, and they take place when Aven was younger, I think in like second grade or so. And each of those books is about whatever activity is mentioned in the title. And I really enjoyed those. I even have reviews up about Baking Machine and Music Machine. I thought those were really good. I thought they had really good lessons for kids, and they were also entertaining. We get to see Aven's personality when she was younger, and I think that she was still just as entertaining. We get to see her life before she moved to Arizona. So there are those books as well. So including those, there are currently 7 books in this universe. I don't know if there will be any more of the Aven Green books, but I think they were a nice addition. I liked seeing that part of Aven, and I do think that those are meant to be read in order. They're not exactly episodic. I think it's best to read them in order. However, I plan on reading a lot more of her books. I think that they will probably be good based on how much I enjoyed these. I think it'll be interesting to see other characters from her. So I have a lot of her books on my TBR, and I really look forward to reading them. I think that she is becoming one of my favorite authors. I think that all her books I've read so far were really good, and I think that they're very well written. So yeah, thank you for joining me on my review of Momentous Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusti Bowling. Let me know if you have read this book, anything else in this series, or anything else by this author. Maybe there's a specific book by her you think I should read next. I mean, of course, I'm going to read The Beat I Drum next when it comes to books by her. But I'm just saying, if you have any other recommendations, you can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you for watching.